Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith and this is Founders of Gloomhaven, which is currently on Kickstarter. This video is not actually part 5, as you'll notice from the title, but an Upkeep video. You might be wondering what that means. Well, there was quite a bit of little minor errors, but they make quite a bit of difference in terms of the gameplay, and I want to square those away. I didn't think it made sense to add them as the beginning of the part 5, so I thought I'd just split them out and we'll deal with them all right now so we can get the game kind of in shape to where it should be, so that we move into part 5, we can just move forward with the gameplay versus talking about any corrections. Now, again, I had been filming these back to back to back, and again, that's very much not my style, but just based on the timing of things and how quickly I wanted to get this out to you guys to see it, there's definitely more mistakes than I even enjoyed to make, but hopefully you're learning through this as well as I am as we go through the playthrough, and there's a benefit to that as well. So let's go through these things that we picked up, I guess, over the past 4 parts of this Founders of Gloomhaven playthrough, and just talk about some of the things that need to be corrected, essentially. And I'll do my best to correct them within the rules of the game. Some things I can't really change because we're too far ahead, but for the most part, most of it we can. So let's go ahead and start right off, first off, with lasting influence. So every single time I recruited an advisor using the recruit card here, I was supposed to take not only a fleeting influence at the time, but also a lasting influence, and I knew this. However, for some silly reason, I just never grabbed it. And we had talked about this through parts 1 to 4, that I'm supposed to have basically a lasting influence for every advisor I got. So that's going to be 4 total as we counted up through those 4 different parts. So I'm going to be putting that into my bin of influence that I currently have. Another thing to talk about is the fact that any influence or fleeting influence that I currently have, I don't get to keep round over round. So in other words, once a cycle goes past or my turn is over, all fleeting disappears, so I wouldn't have that one. But going into this next round, I do have 4, and the reason this is going to be really timely for me is that if I can't deliver to all of the different prestige buildings I need to, I'm going to be able to hopefully use some of these in order to pay off this at the end of the round. That'll come in really, really handy. So that's the lasting influence kind of situation. Although through the parts 1 to 4, I should have been gaining these every single time I grabbed an advisor. Only when I used that recruit card every single time I use it, essentially. So that's that. The other thing is there was an advisor cost, and I missed it. In part 1, I paid the cost that associates itself. So not only when you recruit an advisor, you actually have to pay for the advisor as well, and I did so in the first part, but then going forward in parts 2 and 3, I totally forgot. Now the hard thing is, I can't go back and, at this point, I'm not going to penalize myself by paying for those advisors right now, but just a note that whenever you go ahead and recruit an advisor using this card here, you also gain your fleeting influence, you gain your lasting, but you have to also pay the cost that associates itself up here, so 2 or 1 in the case of the advisor board. So just remember that when you're going through and playing through it yourself. The next thing is the red prestige building being out of bounds, and that is 100% correct, and I don't know how I didn't see it, but when I placed this building down, I didn't even realize that I'd actually put 1 space off the map. I think it's just, for some strange reason, it's completely my fault, and I dropped it right here. Now, the only way to really do this cleanly, because at the end of the day, we had delivered resources that were, the jewelry resource was delivered and the brick, so the only way to clean that up, essentially, is to move it somewhere where they're still connected. So we're still trying to connect the jewelry and the brick. So the only place that makes sense, and I might have to do some jostling kind of live as we go through this video here, and hopefully this makes sense, but I'm not going to be able to place it here, but it needs to be touching at least 1 red space, and obviously can't be out of bounds like I did. So the only places that are going to work for this one is to kind of fire it to the opposite side, which still has a nice trail and a path all the way back to the resources that originally delivered to it, and that won't break any of the gameplay. So in other words, I'm going to have to go like this and kind of bring it all the way over here and do something like this. Now the only thing that's dicey with this is these are considered owned buildings, and so I can't have these adjacent to each other either. So I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative and maybe just turn it like this, and that way this one part of the red, what is it called, the brown door prestige building is going to be, this is a legal placement, as I have at least 1 in this red space there. And when I say red, I mean entrance. You can see the naming of them. I sometimes just refer to them as colors, but that's the proper terminology. So at this point now, those things are safe. And again, the brick resource and the jewelry resource tie all the way back through the road, so we're safe that way. So that's good. The other one that was misplaced, and I don't know how I did this without missing it or without catching it in the video, was I put the wood resource legitimately right beside the gems you can't do that. I'd never done that before. I don't even know why I thought that was legal. So we're going to go ahead and have to move that as well. Now, the wood resource never tied into anything. It never delivered anything. So it had never built up to anything that needed to be delivered. So in terms of me moving it, I can just move it somewhere else. I paid a cost at the time of 2 in order to put this down, because whenever you put a resource into play, it's all based on this cost mechanism here, and you can see the white or gray area is 2, so I paid that. So really, if I put it in a sand location or in and I guess it's not sand, it's coastal or a central location, then I don't have to pay any additional in order to move this around. So I'm going to do that now again to fix my error. So we have to pick a place this can actually land properly. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it up here. Now, I was thinking originally of putting it over here, but I think this 3 space is absolutely perfect potentially later on for one of these higher up resources that we might want to kind of sneak in there. That'll be a perfect spot, so I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to move this here. It doesn't change any gameplay on this because, again, this never delivered anything to anywhere. But later, the wood resource now has access to go this way all the way up, or even wrap around down here, nice and clean. The second resource that I played in the last video, which was incorrect, was the brick resource, and I put it right beside an owned jewelry resource, which I'm not allowed to do. So I had gone ahead and done this, and on top of that, I'd actually forgotten to go ahead and put a claim token on it, which is even worse. So I had to actually kind of cap myself in terms of how much income I was supposed to get. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to be putting another claim token on here, which will then essentially bump up our income to 8, which is then going to give us an extra coin for this coming part 5 video, right? So now we're up to 9, and the only reason we're at 9 is because we had 1 carryover coin from the prior part. So the question now is, how do we get this thing into play and have it be a legal placement? It gets really dicey. And the reason it's dicey is because I've already used a large majority of my coastal areas, which I don't have many of now. The other harsh thing is I do have room for it in different places, but anywhere I put it will be adjacent to another personal owned building, which essentially I'm not allowed to legally do. So it gets a little sticky because I don't think there's really much I can do about this one now. I may have to just say, we'll have to leave it there even though it's an illegal placement. So you guys, just for your own heads up, this you could not do when playing through on your own. So I am breaking the rules by leaving this here. And there really isn't, unless you guys are able to find a different way that I could place this, until we get across the river over here, I'm not going to be able to place this anywhere, because on any spot where I put, it's a 3-tile resource, and on any spot where I put it, it's going to be touching something that I already own. This one doesn't even have enough space to make it happen. This one right here won't work either because I need 3 tiles again, or 3 spaces. This one would work except for the house, the fact the house is sitting right here, so that causes problems. And of course, even if I put it here, the gem would be adjacent as well. So regardless, there's nothing really I can do there. And again, I'm not going to restructure my current city to make up for this, because otherwise it would we'd have to restart or something like that. So just a word of advice: when you see this going forward, this is an incorrect placement and you're not allowed to do this. And I've gone ahead and broken the game that way. So just make a note of that. Okay, so let's think about this. What else is left? Wooden brick resource, we've done that. We've done the income. Do deliver resource points. Oh yes, so the point system. Now I had been talking about this completely wrong, and this again is my fault. So what had happened was I was talking about when we go ahead and we deliver a resource to something, when it has a second tier resource available. So say for instance this one here, jewelry, is at 1 point right there. Well, we tied that in. So for instance, when we actually delivered, I think, jewelry to this Merchant's Guild, which we did, I gave myself 4 points, and then I gave myself an additional point. How it actually works, and this is more so important in the multiplayer game, is this would be 4 points total is what you gain for delivering that resource, and 1 of those 4 points would trickle down to the person who owns jewelry. So if you're playing a multiplayer game, yeah, you might deliver the resource, but the points will be subtracted away from you if other people own those prior tier resources. If you own them, then you just still get the 4 points that you got for delivering the resource. So really, when you're playing solo, the whole second tier and lower, so basically anything that comes from these ones right here in solo don't matter in terms of points, because really at the end of the day, you own, you're gonna get the points for delivering the resource, and that's where it stops. There is no subtracting because there's nobody else playing against you. So essentially, when I went ahead and added up my point totals and went across the track all the way down here to 42, I actually should be a little bit further back just because I gave myself some bonus points when I went through. And the easy way to check your score in solo is to just focus on the resources that need to be delivered. So for instance, you've got 4 points here, 8 points here, so 12, 14, 16, 14, 15, 16. This is 19, 22, 25, 28. Am I missing anything else? 28, 32, and 34. And that's it. You just count what you've delivered. So here's my point marker was on 42. It needs to jump back down to 34. And now we've actually counted the points correctly. Now, I think at this point, if I'm not mistaken, everything should be sorted correctly. I think we've now covered all of the major things I wanted to talk about. The one I really feel bad about, again, is that brick building. Unless you guys are able to in a future video, let me know how I can make that work. The only thing I was thinking of, though, just off the top of my head right now, is that when I laid this brick building, I did not lay a road token with it. So when I did this in part 4, I did not place any road, and you get a road token when you go ahead and do an upgrade. So potentially, if there was some way for me to make this work, which I really don't think there is, and the more I look at this, the more I don't think there really is, because everything I've got here is adjacent. The only thing I could do to make this work, guys, and this could work. Maybe I'll do this as an adjustment so that we don't have to look at it being incorrect for the entire game. I'm just going to shift this jewelry resource just up like this. And by doing this, I can then put the brick resource right like here, basically where it was, and it's still valid and doesn't break anything. This is probably the only fix that will change things. And the thing is, I do have the space now that we've correctly placed the brown door location or prestige building. So now everything should be legal in terms of placement. So hopefully you guys are okay with that. I know there's a little bit of jiggery there, and I'm not a really big fan of bending the rules and stuff like that when you place things down. But in this case, just in case someone was to come into part 5, they might immediately sit there and say, well, you've got your prestige building in the wrong place, or you've got one of your personal owned buildings or resource buildings, sitting together. That's not legal. I just want to make sure everything's clean going into part 5 so we can talk about what's happening in part 5 and not what happened prior. So anyway, that's it for this. I think we've covered everything. Don't want to make this too long. It's perfect. It's about 12 minutes or so. So we're going to jump into the next video with part 5, and we're going to see what I can make happen. Now, I just remembered one other thing. Isaac also cleared up, and I want to thank him also. I really want to thank him actually for jumping in on the videos. That was huge because it's amazing having all the feedback from you guys as well. You guys helped me out huge to be able to make a list so I could correct the mistakes that were made. Also, Isaac jumped in and gave some amazing feedback as well. He also confirmed the fact that if you have resources delivered like we did to the brown door location, when the actual building's put into play, you do not need to put that neutral claim token on it going into that next round. So we can actually take this neutral claim token off because we delivered resources the second it was put into the game. It was connected to other resources we own, and so we automatically deliver, which means we don't have to put a neutral claim token on. And that was something I'd asked in the prior video, and I was very unsure of as to whether or not those instant deliveries counted or not during that placement. So they do, and apparently it does help us by removing at least one of the spots we need to deliver to. Now we just need to focus on the Temple of the Great Oak, the Merchants Guild, and the university. And if we can get the resources to those 3, we should be okay. And we also have 4 lasting influence to help pay for any neutral claim tokens we can't get off the board. Remember, they're going to cost us 2 lasting influence for each one, but as soon as one of these guys completes, and this one's really close, as soon as we complete that, or we complete this one's 1 away, this one's 1 away, and I'm talking about how many resources are left to be delivered. Once they're complete, this ticks up and we get an extra lasting resource in here. So it's going to get really, really interesting to see how that pans out. Anyway, don't want to drone on too long. That's it. That's the cover for all the rules mistakes up to this point. If there's anything I missed or anything I should correct, let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys are enjoying the playthrough. It's a blast and I'm enjoying it so far, and hope you guys will enjoy the last half of this playthrough. So until next time, guys, keep on rolling solo.